So in nature, for example, nothing is waste. Everything has value, multiple values. It starts from one level and degrading to one, and then is fed to the other. So it's a complete loop.
Hello TFFs, welcome to another episode of Tiny Farm Friends podcast. Our guest today, Midushi Kochhar, is a dear friend, an extraordinary biodesigner who's mostly known for making cool stuff out of waste eggshells and waste materials. She's at the forefront of biodesign innovation in India and has also inspired us on our journey at Tiny Farm Lab. So let's discover the work and journey of visionary and dynamic Midushi Kochhar.
Oh, thank you, Midushi, for joining Tiny Farm Friends podcast. I would like to start this podcast by sharing the story about how I got to know you. So I think it was last year I was trying to find workshops on material design and material research, and I came across Eggware workshop. Although it was a paid workshop and I missed the date, but I remember messaging you, and you were kind enough to share the open recipe that you had about Eggware, and that's how we started talking. And then we also got to
Okay, interesting. Was this the material-driven workshop?
Right, exactly. And then I was so happy to meet you in person and share our common interests about materials and like your story also, which we would like to go deeper into. But I think since then, your innovations, Eggware and even Hasiroo, they have been exhibited across the world in countries like China, Milan. So congratulations on that. And
Thank you.
for people who do not know about you, you are the founder of YLEM, right? That's how it's pronounced, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And also, which is a design research studio, and you're also part of Makers on the Move, which is a circular art and design collective. So let's start by knowing more about your journey and your background and how you got into material design and biodesign in the first place.
So my educational background is in industrial design, but my inclination towards natural materials or weird looking objects was in me since I was a child. So I would collect snake skins or some interesting looking bones and shells, and on a hike or even just on the street, some interesting looking bark, and I thought that all children do that. It's quite normal for children to collect these things and make stories around it, but that's not the case actually. So I was always interested in seeking beauty where it's not normal to find it or where no one is looking. And as I grew up, I did my bachelor's and master's in industrial design, but both my graduation projects were again around natural materials. And a good thing about working with natural materials is that its sustainability is a part of the process. I don't have to think on another level to make it sustainable. It already is part of the thing. So yeah, that was, I think, my journey in brief.
So right, like nowadays children are collecting NFTs, but as a child, it is interesting to know that you were collecting all these kind of materials out of curiosity, and maybe that curiosity is led to where you are right now, and maybe founding YLEM in the first place. So what does YLEM mean, and what is the story behind it? How did you end up, starting a design research studio here in India?
Okay, so YLEM is a Middle English word that stands for a hypothetical material that existed before the Big Bang. So it could have been the real thing or it is hypothetical, we're not sure. But because my practice was always about materials and I always keep it as in the forefront, that's where we start our design process. That's where everything starts. So it just made sense to use this word. And it's used in astronomy a little bit, cosmology also, but it's I also like the sound of it. Eggware was a result of my master's thesis at Central St. Martin's University of the Arts, London. And I was trying to research kitchen waste really at the time, what I could find easily around me or in the neighborhood, and see what regular people can utilize within their domestic kitchen in a more innovative way, maybe reduce their waste a little. So after I finished my master's in London at Central St. Martin's, I moved to the Netherlands where we started Makers on the Move with 2 other Dutch designers. So that's a different story. I will come back to it. But during COVID, everyone kind of moved close to their families. So I came back here and was trying to understand, during the lockdowns, what all can I do? And again, eggshells is something that is used in every household. So even at my house and in the neighborhood, whatever I could collect, I was still experimenting. And it just made sense to explore how we can use this material in a studio, how we can take it out to a larger audience. So with this, YLEM was born. And yeah, so Eggware has been in development since the past 2 years, along with a few other materials.
Right. So I think another creative project and maybe the most successful project of your initiative is Hasiroo, right? So, and I think that is also something which you started with your mom, if I'm not wrong. And so I would like to know more about that project and how does the mother-daughter relationship works in a design field.
All right. So again, Hasiroo is a brand name for the material that is made from palm leaves. So we collect these leaves and treat them with a special solution and make footwear, like you can see over here. We're starting with footwear and then maybe some other household items as well. So in terms of the mother-daughter dynamic, my mother has a background in fashion. So long time ago, she used to work for export houses, and then she changed her field and got into education. So now that I needed help with stitching and fabrics and pattern cutting, like she already had that background, so it made sense for us to work together on this project. So she helps with the production bit, and I help with the R&D still. Yeah.
Right. So I think this is something that you make out of Erica palm leaves, right?
Yeah. So these leaves fall naturally every season, every 6 months, and then you have to wash them, clean them, make them in a standard size. And then there are different treatments that you can do for example, for footwear, for table linen, furniture. So there are like lots of different products in the pipeline. But so this project was also started during my bachelor. So again, this was also my thesis project, and I was working with the Dutch designer Tjeerd Beenhoven, who was actually the inventor of this material. Yeah. So again, when I got back from the Netherlands and started exploring say, what materials were in my bank over the years, these two were the most successful ones, as you asked, which is the most successful material. So we're really pushing these two things forward, and then maybe keep developing more materials, or or even help clients with better material alternatives.
Interesting. So I think material or biodesign industry is a very nascent industry in India. So how has been the response for both of your projects, and what are the target groups right now when it comes to the market?
Okay, so biodesign is a new field all over the world, really, not just in India. The response is because India is a very cost sensitive country, so it's very important for any new product to somehow justify the cost, even if it is compared to plastic, neon, polyester, whatever you're using. So even if we offer sustainable materials, there's a cost behind the R&D, the design part, and so it's sometimes it is difficult to justify that. But again, that we're getting a lot of attention because it's also the buzzword sustainable materials, and to be honest, there's like almost nothing available. Even the vegan leather, for example, is not vegan. It's the faux leather. Yeah, so we need to somehow justify the cost. But say for the Hasiroo products, because the material is technically, it just falls off the ground, so we don't have to um, process it much. So it's not a very high value material, but there's enough work that has been going on since 5 years, 6 years on the finishing of the product. So we're trying to make it as affordable as possible. For example, one pair of these slippers is around 500 rupees. On the other hand, Eggware is slightly more niche because we produce in very small batches, and it's more of a high art, high craft material. It's again like very, very new. We are always adding more to the design, changing it, the material properties. So there's like a lot of these little challenges that we face with these materials, um, which makes it slightly more expensive or more affordable, depending on what the raw material is.
Right. You also mentioned that biodesign is not only a nascent industry in India, but outside also. And since you have worked like in India, in Europe, especially London, and even in Netherlands now, so what do you think? How different are the landscapes and the pace of developments and the acceptance of material design in if you try to compare India and Europe?
So again, I would say that the challenge comes in with, of course, education and awareness, and also the costs. So the cost of producing or researching development of new materials is very heavy, right? So if the basics of a society are not sorted, if they're not getting basic healthcare, jobs, shelter over their heads, it becomes difficult to think about the bigger picture, the globe in its entirety. So I think that's one of the challenges we face here, that Pele, you need to have your job sorted before you can think of anything else. Compare it to, say, Europe, where these basics are secured. They are, I think, happier to spend more on the next level of the pyramid.
Right. I think that is an important observation, and I also feel the same. When it comes to climate change, countries like India, Philippines, the third world countries, I mean, they will not adopt anything which is maybe a little expensive, even though it is
Yeah,
sustainable, because
yeah.
we are still considered as poor nations. So maybe for people to adopt more such circular alternatives, we have to think about different methods of capitalism as well as eradicate poverty in the first place.
I just want to circle back to this thing you were saying, um, that the, like we need to rethink capitalism, or if there's a better way of, like, what I like to suggest is that virgin materials are expensive and difficult to source, and these waste materials, biomaterials, are cheaper and abundant, available everywhere. It's just that our industry is set in a way that these resources are undermined, undervalued. Um, so, like, we cannot completely, um, you know, destroy what the structures are at the moment, but maybe we can find these smaller loops, smaller circles that can connect these resources. So, as in the most basic sense, waste from one industry can become resource for the next, and these smaller circles can help reduce waste, second, have a new stream of income, uh, increase employment, and is just makes more better economic sense, I would say, as
Right,
opposed to uh, like saying that capitalism is bad. You cannot actually stop it. And second, if you reduce the consumption of whatever the needs of the society are, it's not it's again not sustainable. So there
right,
needs to be um, yeah, these smaller interconnected systems, I would say.
right. I think you also often like to quote the sentence by Ken that waste is a design flaw, right? So, what are your thoughts on that, and can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, exactly. No, I really like it. It's a quote by Kate Krebs. Um, and waste. So in nature, for example, nothing is waste. Everything has value, multiple values. It starts from one level and degrading to one, and then is fed to the other. So it's a complete loop. Nothing is really wasted in nature, and and no other species does it except for humans. So this is a real flaw that we have as a society, and if you really look closely, you can find value, you can find application for each and everything. is is what I feel. This is what we're trying to do with, say, Eggware. Eggshells is, for example, it has no monetary value. So where we collect this, from where we collect the eggshells is, this is a large egg processing unit. So they would either incinerate them, or they will just they'll just maybe degrade, or nothing happens to them. So if someone can identify the value and put it to use, of course they can make money from this waste, from this waste. And for someone like me, it's a low value material, so I can also produce it at a lower cost. So it just, I would say, makes sense like that.
You also mentioned that your organization is a global organization. So what do you mean by global?
In terms of local, is that um, whatever your resources are can be found locally in and around your city, and the same thing, the same material, the same product can be produced in a different scenario somewhere else, meaning
Right.
that they would also have the same kind of waste around them. So instead of shipping your material from all over the world to
Yeah.
Bangladesh to get,
If I could understand you correct,
Hmm.
what you are trying to say is that maybe we can have decentralized models, although for example they're making Eggware or Hasiroo, but they're just resourcing the palm or the eggshells just within that particular city where
Yeah.
they're trying to produce that product.
Yes, exactly. Eggshells. It's not that difficult to procure. Eggs are found everywhere. It's not that it has to be, say, a pineapple plantation from where you procure it. It's just, it's just there. So similar to that, there are so many things that I can find in and around Delhi, and make sensible stuff out of it. Sometimes I would say, instead of solving problems, you could seek the problem. I mean, if there's this eggshell pile, like tons and tons of eggshells being wasted, it's not exactly a toxic problem, if I can say. It's not. It's still a natural material. But if I look deeper into it, I'm looking for the solutions I can make from it. So then the material comes first, and the solution becomes second, if that makes sense.
Right, I understand. So maybe we can talk about more about the approach, design approach as a material designer. And do you think somebody needs institutional degree to maybe take this approach, or how can one go about maybe becoming a material designer, biodesigner?
Okay, so firstly, there are very, very few degrees in material design. Of course, there's material science and engineering, but if you approach it from the creative side, there's very few degrees. But interestingly, more and more courses are coming up, so that means there's a demand for it and an application for this skill set. So that's a good thing. And I honestly feel that if you do get educated in a subject, of course it's going to help you, but you can do it on your own as well. The cons of this, doing it yourself, would be that it will take you some time to have it scientifically tested, to be within the standards of certain materials. You need to have certain certifications. So if there is an educational degree around it, or you have those facilities within the institution, these steps become easy, plus the exposure you get within these courses. So I would say it's definitely useful. But again, jobs are like, there are no jobs in this field just yet, but it's a growing thing. And there are a lot of interesting work going on with these kind of biomaterials. Of course, you're aware of mycelium. There's algae, all sorts of agriculture waste, chitin, for example. So there's lots and lots that you can explore on your own. But as a designer, what I feel my limitations are, that I'm working on a surface level, and I'll be glad to start working, or have inputs on a molecular level. So getting deeper into material, and understanding it from that say scale to see what the bigger picture can be. So starting from bottom to top instead of top to bottom kind of an approach. Yeah.
Right. So that's an interesting approach, and I think there will always be a question and of bottom up versus top down, and I think again both have their pros and cons, and also it depends on the situation. But you mentioned few other biomaterials such as algae, EV, mycelium. So is there anything in your mind in particular that you want to explore next as a material?
Yeah, I think I would love to work with mycelium at some point. I think that could be our next material. I think it's just the material itself is genius. So as humans, we have to do very little intervention to make it useful for our lifestyles. It can be applied in almost everything: construction, packaging, fashion, um, and its properties are, it's of course it's biodegradable, fire retardant, water resistant. It's everything on its own. So as humans, we just have to make these little design connections, if I could say that, and have nature work for us and then disintegrate on its own. So I think it's a beautiful material.
So we talked a lot about all the super cool stuff that you're doing, but I would also love to know more about Makers on the Move initiative. So what is it? What's the inspiration behind it? And what are you guys up to with that?
Okay, so Makers on the Move is a maker arts collective, and we're a group of three designers. One is a social designer, one is an arts educator, and I am the material designer on the team. And what our concept is that we collect a lot of low value waste material from local manufacturers around the city of Arnhem, and we supply it to schools and universities for their hands-on activities. So anyone can approach us for, um, if they're looking for a certain kind of material, but they want upcycled version. We
Right.
have this material bank that we've been developing since the past 2 years. So there's all sorts of interesting ways that you can find. And if and when people want to use that material, they can approach us and we'll provide them. We also have lessons around these materials. So it depends really on the client if they want the educational bit and the materials or only the materials. And then slowly we want to graduate towards making products from these upcycled materials.
Great. So is it something that you are targeting for children specifically?
So it started for children, but now it's used in universities also. And people are approaching us just on their own if they're looking for some kind of upcycled materials. And interestingly, even the industries around us approach us with, okay, so we have this material in this quantity. Do you want to keep it in the bank? And we're like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. This is something that we can apply. So then we bring that material in. So it's a really nice interaction that we have um, around these materials. And it's also interesting because children are being introduced to these upcycled materials from a very young age. So they don't actually have to think that, okay, this is a second degree or degraded material. Okay, they're using this material and making something of value, whatever the exercise is based on that. So in a way, we're trying to improve the ideology behind waste. And it's not the disgusting uh, material that you think it is. It's just that it is not taken care of. It's not um, yeah. So this is the whole concept behind it.
So now coming back to the landscape question, also about the infrastructure and the setup Netherlands has, compared to India, because it is more positive and it is more trying to more encouraging in a way that there are festivals like Dutch Design Week, and there are a lot of small design research studios. There are labs like Blue City Labs in London. There is open cell, and so a lot of incubator situation for studios like YLEM, if I could say. Do you think we lack such an infrastructure in India, and why is the case?
Yeah, we do lack the infrastructure. in not just this sense, but in a lot of other fields also. And I think it just comes down to the costs involved. Um, like for example, the event there was, since plastic got banned again, I visited an expo which was non-plastic material expo, and in terms of course there were really well-made ethical products, but on the other hand, in terms of innovation, there wasn't much happening. Among say 50 stalls, there were like 2 or 3 people that were really pushing the innovation and creating something cutting edge.
As a social enterprise or a design and research studio, so what are some immediate challenges that you're facing right now?
Okay, immediate challenges would be finding the right marketplace. All the places that we approach, that this is our ethical, organic, natural leather material, so it is placed next to vegan leather, which is not vegan, it's petroleum based. I mean, it's vegan, but it's still petroleum based, but it's gushing and it's not true to the meaning. So then we don't want to be placed next to them, right? So finding and then selling things on your own is a completely different task. So that is one. Second would be to make people understand the value of waste. So sometimes people come to us that, okay, you're using waste, then why is it so expensive? But they're not understanding that it's been 4 or 5 years, whatever, to develop something out of this
Right.
cheap waste material. Plastic is cheap now, but it took them 50, 60 years to develop what plastic we're known. Also finding the right kind of skills, because again, um, like this is not a regular material that people are used to stitching. So it took us like a very, very long time to hack a sewing machine or um, find people who are ready to experiment enough to get the kind of results we're looking for, to find that level of sophistication in the making. It takes a lot of time, hence the price is higher. But yeah, again, we want it to be available to large audience, so we're always trying to balance that out.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, thank you. This has been a wonderful insight to what all goes in building a design and research brand, especially at the intersection of material design and circularity. So, before we end, can you maybe share some advice for somebody who maybe did his or her bachelor's in design, or even irrespective of the field, who wants to get into biodesign or material research? So, what advice would you like to give to them?
A few suggestions that I can give are maybe one is that you can literally start in your own kitchen. There's this website called materium.org, and they have um, lots of recipes that design students created on their own. So they're very easy to access and approach. It's not very scientific. And see what materials you are comfortable with. If at all you enjoy, making things with your hands, and see if the results encourage you to explore it further. Second could be, if you are already a designer creating products, you could start with replacing just one element of the product that you're making. So for example, if you're making a lamp, you could start by replacing the virgin metal with recycled metal. And I don't mean melting the metal and then using it. That is cool that it happens in our country very easily, but in the same way, in the same structure that it has been discarded. So just replacing single element at a time, um, so that you don't have to change your entire practice. Just keep inserting better materials. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Midushi. And you always inspire us as a studio to try new materials and take up different projects and see the world in a different way from a different perspective. And I'm sure you will inspire a lot of listeners to take up new materials and maybe together, you know, expand this whole field of material design research in India. Thank you
That would
once
be
again.
great
Yeah.
if that happens.